I think sometimes people get too clever for themselves. And what I mean by that is, you think to yourself, I wake up, I'm going to write a comic story. I'm working for one of the big two, or maybe I've got this indie book I've always wanted to write. And so I have to do it. I have to do it perfect. I got to tell the story I've always wanted to tell. I could get hit by a meteor tomorrow. So I got to get that, that story that I've always wanted to tell out of me and get it onto the page and get it out into the world. So I've got that legacy. And I think in that process, people wind up pretty dramatically overthinking the whole process. And what comes out the other end just isn't that good. Hey everyone, this is Perch. I'm going to make a bunch of generalizations in this video. I'm just warning you up front. I know there are exceptions, and this is a video that will be filled with exceptions. So just pointing that out there. Um, I read a lot of comics where I at the end of it I put the comic down and I think for a minute and I'm like the writer was trying to do something here. The writer was trying to come up with a unique story or trying to take a different twist on a character or wanted to do something unique or whatever it might be, but it didn't take. And to the contrary, not only did it not take, but it wound up being more blah, more ordinary than if the writer had just written a quote unquote by the numbers 80s style action story. I use that term a lot because it's stuck in my head. I think I'm referencing, it sounds like I go to party at San Diego Comic Con all the time, but the reality is, I've been to a handful of parties throughout the 90s and aughts and the teens. Actually, now that I think of it, quite a few parties. All right, and I have to retract everything I just said. No, I've been to a lot of these events, and it's come up more than once. Whenever something comes up at an event with some other people in the industry, be they creators or publishers, distributors, whoever, whenever something comes up like two or three times, it sticks in my brain as this common piece. And one of the things that comes up a lot from creators is this idea of um, we have to you can't do one of those 80s action stories, I think is the exact phrase. You can't do one of those 80s stories. And what they mean by that, because I've pressed, what do you mean by that? Because there's a lot of stories in the 80s. I mean, some stuff that Wolfman did, some stuff that Claremont did, and other. There's some Frank Miller wrote some great stuff in the 80s. Alan Moore. So I mean, we're not complaining about that, are we? But what people really mean is kind of this, like I would call there was a run of time where the Avengers would show up. There's a villain does something evil. Avengers are on the ropes for a while, and then they figure it out, they stop it, and everybody's smiling. They all eat Hostess fruit pies, and then it's all over. And it's that kind of like the one and done, or the couple issues where it's villains do some villainous things and heroes beat them, and everybody's happy in the end. And there's a dislike for those stories. There's a we can't write those stories. But the problem is the pendulum has kind of swung so far in the other direction that we've got a lot of stories that kind of have no point, or they wind up not really accomplishing much of anything. Is maybe this villain that you're going up against doesn't need to be a realistic villain that could be around any street corner, and we're showing how their villainy doesn't need to be big and flashy. It can be hidden and toxic. I mean, maybe we don't need those stories so much, or maybe we've got enough of them. Maybe it's time to let's go ahead and bring back Doctor Doom and have him do something evil. Like we don't need to see that Doctor Doom has some people in Lavernia who like him, and that maybe his fascism is actually born out of a desire to protect his people, and there's shades of gray in what he's doing, and what kind of moral quandary are the Fantastic Four going to blah 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 blah. I mean, maybe you could just have the Red Skull try and blow up New York, and the heroes have to stop him. I'm not saying you do that every time, but it comes back to I feel like people overthink it. Like a lot of creators, they feel like they've got to tell that story. They've got to tell the unique story. They can't tell an ordinary story. And in many cases, it winds up making these stories sound exactly the same. And by the way, and here comes a big generalization, but a friend of mine shared a cartoon that was funny. It was so on the nose. And it was that, hey, we want to celebrate LGBTQ creators, writers who are writing unique stories and doing unique comics, and that's cool. This wasn't my friend's point. This is just what I took from the cartoon. But that's a cool idea, and it sounds fine. Sign me up. Okay, fine. But then why is it that the stories are all about kind of self doubt? And I mean, it's the same themes. Like can we have a? I think this is, by the way, a big reason why Apollo and Midnighter worked so well at Wildstorm in DC. It's because you had two characters. They were out. They didn't. There's no real shenanigans about them being out. They didn't. They didn't. They weren't racked with self doubt over the fact that they were gay. They just had accepted it and were out there kicking ass and doing their thing. And so you look at it and you say, all right, if you want to celebrate an LGBTQ author coming out and doing some unique piece of work, maybe you can just write some kick-ass story with a gay lead that is just gay and doing great. Maybe they don't need to struggle with the same things that all of them seem to struggle with. In the cartoon, it had this bit of like, make sure at some point in the story that there's like a shadowy figure that's in the character's head saying, whispering, "You're not good enough," as a way to kind of show the self-doubt inside. I'm like, no, don't do that, and it feels weird for me because I think some people, it feels weird for me as somebody who enjoys a lot of comic books from all different creators to be basically saying, hey, I'd like to see some good kick-ass stories by LGBTQ authors, creators, writers. I'd like to see them. Let's see them. Let's come on, hit it out of the park. Let's go. I'm up for it. And then should I be the one advocating for this? I mean, I guess I can, but like, can other people also carry this baton? I mean, I think it would be nice if some other people could go for this as well. I think that would be pretty nice. I don't know. I look at comics. So we've got all these comics out here. We got lots of stories out here, and we got a lot of writers, a lot of creators trying to prove themselves for the first time. They're trying to make their name, and I think there are obvious examples, obvious things out there that show you exactly how to do it. If you look at Donny Cates, Donny Cates, for whatever else, he came into Marvel and he wrote stories about Thanos doing Thanos things and blowing crap up and had some characters, and that's what he did. He didn't come in and have Thanos, reveal that he was abused as a child, and it's like, I mean, So if you're a new creator, can you? Why not? Why not maybe as your first outing? Try to do that kind of 80s story by the numbers, get the formula just completely right. Why not start there and move your way into more complex things? I mean, I'd love to take maybe this would be a great video series, but look at some writers like Frank Miller, like George Perez, like more modern writers, like Tom King, and find their first stories, the first things they did on the indie market, then the first things they did for the big two, and or whenever they quote unquote made it, and what did they do? What did that progression look like? Because it feels like a lot of people get into the big two and are like, all right, now that I finally got it into the big two, I got to write that perfect story that really gives some detail and some nuance and gets into why the Kingpin was fat shamed as a child, and that set up a lifelong insecurity that transitioned itself into self-loathing. And hey, I'm like, or you could just have him like in his sumo diaper punching out ninjas. I mean, that works too, I guess. I don't know. What do you think? Do sometimes the comics feel like they're overdoing it? Like they're actually, that they're overthinking kind of the story and to its harm? I think so. Let me know in the comments below. Like, subscribe, follow me on Twitter or Facebook at Comic Perch. Send me an email at comics@perch@gmail.com. And thanks for listening.